the Minister aware that according to the data from Eurostat, the European Union Statistics Agency, and based on the ratio of tax collected to gross domestic product, that Ireland is the least taxed country in Europe. The average European rate stood in 2018 at 40.3%, whereas the rate in Ireland stands at 23%. What does the Minister propose to do to address this?
Burton. The publication identifies Ireland as having the lowest tax to GDP ratio in the European Union at 23%. This low ratio, however, primarily reflects very well-known issues around the measurement of GDP in Ireland. As a result, this measurement is not an accurate reflection of the relationship between tax revenues and economic output in Ireland. You'll be aware, Deputy, of the work that we have done to develop the gross national income star method of looking at our national income, where we are stripping out some of the effects of global companies and globalisation on our national accounts. As a result of this, GNI Star provides a better measure of national income and one which is more consistent with actual economic activity that's taking place here. Accordingly, the share of tax revenue to output in Ireland is best measured using that as the base. Taxes as a share of gross national income star amounted to 37.7% in 2018. This figure compares with Eurostat's recently reported EU-wide tax to GDP ratio of 40.3%. So, Deputy, when you look at the more appropriate measurement of our national income, our tax as a share of national income is still below the average for the European Union, but far less below than using gross domestic product as the denominator. And I believe it's a far more accurate measure of how you can measure tax as a share of our national income.
Deputy, 1 minute, please.
Would the Minister agree that the issue for Ireland is the fact that we have very low corporate taxes? And, for instance, we have institutions like the banks, particularly the banks we bailed out, paying little or no tax. They pay a modest levy of 150 million on profits now running into the billions, and the Minister has refused to address that. But secondly, we have middle and higher income workers paying quite a lot of income tax, low-paid workers paying relatively little, but paying some PRSI. And what we have then is a complete distortion caused by particularly the very big international companies in Ireland, and that fact that a lot of intellectual property has been brought into Ireland. Now, Minister, this is a scandal in the rest of the world. One can only describe it as that. Many poor countries struggle to survive because these big corporations are paying very little tax anywhere.
Minister.
I've noticed an increasing tendency in the Labour Party to appear to deny or share any experience they've ever had from being in government at all. And you were a member of a government, Deputy Burton, and a very fine member of the government, and you performed great leadership to our state at a very difficult time. And during that time, you well understood the kind of pressure that our corporate tax regime is under. You understand and understood then all the sensitivity in relation to the rate and all of the challenges around that. What we have, Deputy, here is an issue in relation to the measurement of our national income. That is the key issue here. And I believe it is wrong, and you are wrong, to say that from this measurement of our national income, we then go and need to make a set of changes, one of which in particular I believe could be very, very damaging. We have a corporate tax regime that levies tax on a very wide range of economic activity at a rate that we are standing over. It's not the case that I have refused to address the issue in relation to taxation that our banks make to Ireland. I've debated this issue with you on many other occasions, but it is my view that changing it in the way you want would have other very serious consequences for other interests the Irish taxpayer has.
Well, thank you, Minister, for the compliment. Yes, I was one of the people who initiated the contacts with the OECD, because we only have a limited amount of time before the rest of the world refuses to accept that other parts, certain parts of the world, can have a situation where fabulously wealthy corporations make no tax contributions. We facilitate that, and that is why I have been, and now the OECD is also an advocate of minimum effective tax contributions. Now, I've given you a simple example here. The banks in Ireland took the shirts off the backs of Irish workers to bail them out. When the Labour Party was in government, and I acknowledge again, I was very much the author of the bank levy and that proposal to your predecessor. And that yields 150 million. But I am taking the small example of the banks. Paul Krugman, the Nobel Economics Prize winner, used the term leprechaun economics to describe the phenomenon that you've just described now. When are you going to get banks and other very large corporations to pay a minimum fair share of tax?
But you made the assertion there a moment ago that we facilitate very large companies pay no tax. Deputy, what we do is we implement our tax policy fairly, without regard to any company or any individual. You give no recognition at all to the many, many changes that have been made in our corporate tax policy, including by myself over the last number of years, where we've dealt with issues in relation to hybrids, we've dealt with issues in relation to how tax is levied when income leaves our state. And you'll also be aware of the changes that were made by the last government that continue to be implemented by this. You may throw around charges of leprechaun economics and so on for your own political benefit, which you repeated. It is my job, Deputy, to ensure that our reputation continues to be built because of the changes that we are making. And if I made any of the changes that you are recommending, and if they resulted in the loss of a single Irish job, you'd be the very first deputy into this House castigating me for doing it.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Tommy.